Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls all over the world. My name is Brandon.
Sorry.
I am with the Rags Turrets community, and I am the Master Commander, Supreme Ayatollah, all that jazz. We got Jexxa, we got Abra, Jesse with Liquid Loans, and they offered to put themselves up on a crucible here. So I've been very, very excited to receive all of these burning questions from the community in my DMs. It's making me quite popular on the backs of your crucifixion. So thank you, fellas.
Thanks for having us
You're
on,
welcome.
man. Like I said, it's the first time I've had a chance to chat with you and be on this stream. So yeah, appreciate you getting me on here.
Yeah, man. Nice fade, dude. I appreciate that fade.
Yeah. I've done that especially for you, mate. Went and got a nice trim yesterday, so
Love it.
Looked the part.
And then Jeff, man, I think this is the first time I've met you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Yeah, can't complain. And then there's Jesse. So we'll just keep moving on here. All right, Jesse, how are you, man? Tell everybody what you do.
I try and tell as many people about liquid loans as possible.
Yeah.
I try and entertain all of the questions. There's very few, if there's like no questions we're not willing to answer. So
yeah,
we thought we'd give, like, that's why we're here right now. We thought we'd give a central setting where anybody can ask the very toughest questions possible to the three guys who like to answer questions.
Okay.
That's why we're here.
That's cool. We got a little comment. Do you guys, how does this sound, guys? Do we have feedback? Is there anything weird in the chat? Let me know. Let me know. All right. And we're going to get moving here. So the first thing that we want to do, we just kind of want to warm things up here. Nothing crazy. I wanted to ask you guys, what would you guys say, based on your information about how the Liquid Loans protocol operates, what would you say the safest ways to use Liquid Loans actually are?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll ask you, Jexxa.
Yeah. Like any tool that's given to someone, it can be used for good or for evil, or used correctly or incorrectly is probably the better way to put that. It doesn't matter whether it's Hex, Uniswap, a normal exchange with leverage trading on it. You put all these tools in front of people, and ultimately the users have to be responsible in the way they use the tools and the platforms. Safest way that we see to use Liquid Loans is to make sure you're collateralizing your vaults in a way that removes pretty much all the risk from liquidations. Now, I say pretty much all because, hey, things happen in crypto. There's rug pulls, there's black swan events, but they're usually few and far between. So if you set yourself up in the best possible position in terms of the way you collateralize your vaults, you are, I wouldn't say totally immune, but you can withstand 99% of the things that the market will throw at you. We've done the modeling, we've done the testing, we've run our own vaults on systems that are already operational on other chains. It's stable. We've been through dips this past few months, and the protocols where I've had vaults operating, they're fine. They withstand all these dips and bumps, and I've been running them on the risky end, what I see as the risky end, just to see how immune to these sort of fluctuations they are. I'm pretty happy with the way it's all panned out.
Jackson, give us an example with real numbers about how somebody would be very, very well protected against these massive dips.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll go with what I think you should do as a minimum, and then we'll step back to what the system allows you to do. That's probably the better way to look at it. So I think if you're starting out, having your vault collateralized at around 1,000%.
What does that mean?
That means you put in enough pulse to and you only extract about 10% of that pulse's value in USDL tokens.
So use numbers. So let's say 20. Let's say 10,000. No, let's say 100,000. So we put in $100,000 worth of pulse.
Yep.
Why would we put in 100,000 to be very, very safe against risk?
Yeah.
What number
Okay.
would
So
we want to be taking a loan out on?
okay. So maybe $10,000
Okay.
extracting it. Yeah. And the reason why you would do that is we know the market fluctuates with the price of, so if you, the native currency you're using, so whether it's ETH or Pulse, that currency fluctuates. So you want to be able to bear any market movements. Now, if you do it at 1,000%, you can withstand an 89% market dip. And that's assuming that it went straight down and you didn't take any action on adjusting your vault if that period of that drop went longer than a day, which they usually do. If we go through, we've just witnessed it with Hex, 75% pullback or 72% pullback. It didn't happen overnight. That took 2-3 months to play out all those moves. So you've got plenty of time to be able to adjust things if you need to. But if you're sitting at that 1,000%, then you could have done nothing during what we just seen in Hex and still been totally fine, still been okay. So if you set your collateral ratios at that level, you're looking pretty good. Now, in reality, when you go and look at the protocol running on ETH, there's vaults sitting at 5,000, 10,000% collateral because people understand that you can put those funds in and safely draw out some USDL or some stable coin and sleep well at night knowing that you're not going to get liquidated. So that's the way we envisage people using it and using it correctly. Now I'll go down a little bit deeper and say, what can the system do and what are some of the recommendations in general on the system? So if a good safe level is still around 200 to 250% collateralized.
Okay.
Now, but that's not what we recommend. We recommend you go higher. Okay. But that's what the system can safely operate at. And we see that on the Liquidity protocol, plenty of vaults sitting in that level, and they're totally fine. When it gets down to the lowest you can go is 110. But let's face it, if you set a vault up at 110 or 111% collateralized ratio, as soon as there's a movement in the price, you're going to get liquidated. So don't do it. Like, that's the simple message there. You shouldn't be ever doing that unless you're employing a particular strategy. And Jesse's alluded to this before, where you could take out something like that where maybe you're taking a bet where the price of ETH is at a certain level and you think it's there's a good chance it could go up. So you want to extract the value from your ETH. You want to sell your ETH, but you don't want to let it go just in case the price does rocket up. So you could do a minimum collateral ratio at a particular price. And if you extract that value, and if the price of ETH goes up, happy days. You haven't sold out your ETH. You've managed to ride up that pump and you've extracted the value. But if the opposite happens and the price dips, you've already extracted the value. So like Jesse said, it's like a stop loss. So you can use it for those sorts of advanced strategies, but for most people, when they're starting out, you shouldn't even be toying with that. Learn how the system operates and set really safe collateral levels.
All right. So when price is dropping, your collateralized price is dropping, you use the word adjust. What can somebody do to save themselves if they feel like it's going to get to the point where they get liquidated?
You can repay some of the debt. So pay back some of the USDL and make your collateral ratio more favorable. Or you could add more pulse to your vault and boost up the amount of collateral you've got backing it. So this can all be done on the fly. Very, very easy to do.
Okay. Next question / statement that I've gotten here.
Can I answer that other question first?
What question are you answering?
Jexxa's. So the one that you just asked Jexxa about, what I would probably do from a lower risk would be using the loan token. So the low risk, no risk play in this protocol is the loan token staking.
Okay.
Whereas the next level up, because all you're doing is staking it, you're staking it in the contract, you're receiving back something for sitting in that contract. There's no risk. There's no risk from the protocol. Taking anything. There's no leverage there. There's no
unless the
borrowing
contract
there.
gets compromised, I presume.
That's
only
in
risk,
every
right?
that's in every blockchain, correct?
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
And then the next level above that would be the stability pool. putting USDL in the stability pool, you're at risk of having to give up some of that and return a slightly larger portion back in pulse whenever liquidations occur. But you're also receiving another reward token to compensate for that possible loss.
Okay.
So that would be your next step up. And then obviously the borrowing would be your most risky position.
That's really good, Abra. I was taking it very literal in terms of using it for its intended purpose, but that's awesome to look at it from that point of view as well, where you're engaging with the protocol, but you're not doing the lending side. You're just getting the yield bearing token, which is the loan token as a reward. So yeah, that's a good approach.
Exactly.
I'll kind of cast that from now on. When I ask questions, you guys decide who wants to answer. We'll just go from there. Will liquid loans be the reason new people quit crypto?
Can you put a bit of context around that?
I don't know what they intended, but I'm assuming that because they're new, and if they get wrecked with your protocol, I guess that's kind of where they're going with. So, what are your thoughts on that?
If you don't understand how to use something, like it's the same thing. If someone starts using a tool without understanding how to use it, it doesn't matter what tool they're using. You got to, in what I say is RTFM. So read the effing manual. If you don't use something until you understand how it works, and that goes with Hex as well. We've seen people blow themselves up with emergency ending stakes. So don't think people can't do that in Hex as well. I've watched a good friend blow up a very large stake because he didn't read the manual. So that's any tool you use.
Okay. Anybody else have anything else?
Just like Jexxa said, any tool can be used for good or for bad. Understand what you're getting yourself into.
Understood.
I believe, it's an interesting question because I actually believe this will be a tool that allows a lot of people to stay in their favorite crypto, such as Pulse. See, I often think about the math and what happens when people sell. And when you sell, it feels good initially if you're in profits. If the price is done, good for you. You sell, you turn it into stable coin, you go cash some of it out or whatever, and it feels good initially. But every time you do that, but you hear this all the time, right? You hear, oh, make sure you get your initial out. You hear, make sure you take profits. If the price 2x's, make sure you sell half your bag. And what happens is you're taking some profits, but you're literally cutting your coin count down and down and down and down, which makes further earnings that much harder, right? Because the what you're left holding on to now has to go up significantly more for you to extract that same amount of value. And you can moon math all day long. I like to do some simple math just so people to understand. If you were to start with $20,000 and you said to yourself, every time the price doubles, which isn't unusual in crypto. It happened with Hex. It went through 15 doublings or something?
Yep.
Okay, so if you said every time the price doubles, you want to get at least your initial out. Okay, so the 20 grand, price doubles to 40 grand, you say, sweet, I'm selling 20 grand. But your coin count just got cut in half. And then you do it again, and it gets cut in half again. By the end of 20 doublings, you have less than one. If you started with 100 coins, you'd have less than one coin. Okay. And you would have 220. If it was 20 grand to start with, you'd have $220,000 to show for it. Now, compare that to somebody who literally held. We're not even talking about collateral levels yet. Where you can safely collateralize so that you can avoid liquidation. Somebody who just simply held, starting with $20,000 through that same time period. Let's go through 10 doublings. That's $20,480,000. So you decided to sell. You did what everyone told you your whole life, your whole adult life. Take profits, take profits. Make sure you get your initial out. And every time you're listening to those people, your coin count is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, making it harder for you to earn anything. And all that you're left with in this scenario would be $220,000. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there and I'm hodling and I'm not selling at all. And I have over $20 million. Now, if I chose to that whole time, I could have minted myself some loan, some USDL, some stablecoin at whatever collateral level that I felt safe. I could have extracted millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. And just one last point to this, that $220,000 that you extracted along the way, you might as well nearly cut that in half because you had to give half away to taxes. Leaps and bounds difference from somebody who sells versus somebody who doesn't.
Awesome. Thank you for that explanation. Let me ask you guys this. Can you explain to people here in the chat what recovery mode is with regards to your white paper?
Yeah. Recovery mode goes into effect when the total collateralization ratio of the entire system is 150 or below. And what it looks at is it starts at the lowest collateralized vaults at that point, and it starts to allow for liquidation from the bottom for however many vaults it would take to raise that back up above 150% for the entire system. So it'll allow those vaults that are the lowest, and that would remove enough debt in the system to bring that ratio back up to 150% or above.
Why would that happen? How can people protect against that?
Definitely keep above 150% at all times. So use that as your base number rather than 110. That would be the best thing. And when you see the number for the total collateralization ratio going even close, say even 200 or lower, really it should be a community that is aware and that tries to do something to counter that, right? So put more in. Everybody should put more in if you can, right? Your collateral. You maybe should pay back something just to keep that rate up so that so the system is always in the best solvency state it can be.
So if I've done everything right in terms of followed the rules, the collateralization is correct. If I'm less collateralized than somebody else and it goes in recovery mode, the system just goes all the way to the bottom and starts polishing off.
Yeah, so it looks at the lowest and it says, okay, how many of these vaults would need to be liquidated to bring that number back up to 150, plus 150.
So
Okay.
And then it allows somebody to liquidate those vaults, just as if it was a regular liquidation at that point.
Okay. You have
and it's all to keep solvency. So it wants to make sure that the system never gets to a point that it has to worry about the market dipping fast enough to remove the value from the underlying collateral to make sure all stable coins are always worth a dollar's worth of pulse.
Okay.
So if the entire system state is getting below 150, there's a problem, right? It needs to go through some kind of remediation of some sort, and that's community involvement at all levels all the time. So people just have to realize what's going on. They should be educated. Make sure you get educated if you aren't already about recovery mode, and then take actions to go against that recovery mode. And that's always to remove debt or put more collateral in.
All right. So to follow up on that, how do we know Liquid Loans doesn't have a huge pulse bag and can make a dip further and further to liquidate people and then buy right back for less?
So
is that an imaginary horrible, or?
No, it's just a question that somebody asked that they want an answer to.
So like a whale sort. Yeah.
So I invite people to show me a blockchain coin on chain that is wicked, like a huge giant wick, 50%, 60%, 90%. Okay. Because what you find with the blockchain native coins on chain, I'm not talking about on an exchange where they have their own order book and they hold all the coins, and that's the only place they get the price feed. I'm talking about on chain. The native coin is paired to thousands upon thousands upon thousands of other coins. And if a whale tries to wick a price, right, he can go to one token pairing and he can try. But as soon as he does it, there's arbitrage immediately. And there's bots that are buying it right back up again. So you've got time-weighted averages working against you if you're a whale trying to do that. You've got oracles that are working against you. You would have to have trillions of dollars of economic energy and have thousands upon thousands of people helping you to dump the price on all of the pairings all at the same time. Now, think about what you're gaining if you manage to do this imaginary horrible. What do you liquidate a few accounts? A handful of them? Where does the pulse go from those liquidated accounts? It doesn't even go to you. It goes to the entire community of people who are participating in the stability pool, of which you may be one. So you're dumping millions upon millions or billions of dollars of your bags, giving away all that free coins to people so that you can pick up a couple $100, a few $1,000. It literally makes no sense. This activity isn't found on Liquidity on Ethereum chain. You don't find it on Aave on Maker protocol with DAI. People don't do it because it's dumb. You're literally just giving away free money if you even attempt to do it.
I just want to touch on something about liquidations as well, because Jesse's alluded to something. So a lot of the liquidations that you see and all the headlines you see are happening on centralized exchanges, and they're happening because people are using leverage in a completely different way. So on a centralized exchange, you might have $100, and you take that $100 and you actually get a 10x leverage or a 100x leverage. So you're actually borrowing money that you don't already have. You only had the $100. So you only need a very small price movement in the asset that you've leveraged on, and you'll get liquidated. And that's when you end up with all these cascading liquidations. And that's why you see the price dip, because everyone goes through this cascade effect. We're the opposite. You're not borrowing funds you don't have. You already have the funds. You're taking a small slice of those funds. So the risk of cascading liquidations and things like that, combined with what Jesse's just mentioned about how would you even manage to wick a price down on the blockchain, and combined with the fact that people aren't 10xing and 100xing their leverage. It's an unfounded reality, because that's not what happened. That's not how the system works. It's not how leverage is taken on this system. It's very, very marginal.
All right. Another question. Is there a set amount of supply of loan token, or will there be more minted? If so, how would you know how much to mint, especially with the delayed gratification feature?
Yes, there'll be a set amount of loan token. Yep. And much the way Pulse X and Pulse Chain, their total supply is being calculated, you could imagine that if someone was to airdrop you tokens for your sacrifice, it would be calculated in the same manner.
Okay. So this other question comes from somebody in the chat, and I wouldn't expect you to understand something that's not your project, but they ask, compare liquid loans to Hedron. What are differences or similarities?
The Hedron guys aren't going to like it if I do it. Okay, so I'll explain it.
Yep.
So I look at three things. Hex, we take value we already have, we push it out into the future for our future selves. Okay, so it's a savings account, taking things we have to better ourselves in the future. Liquid loans is taking something we have, extracting some value from it, so we can make use of it. So it is a collateralized lending protocol, much like if you had a home loan, you might extract some value out of the value that's accrued in your home, the equity that's accrued in your home, to do something. Could be holidays, could be renovations, whatever. But you've got the value sitting there behind it, and you've extracted a bit of value from it. Hedron, as far as I can see it, if you and there's multiple facets to here. So let's just talk about the borrowing side or the lending side of Hedron. It is more like a credit card or an advance where you're borrowing against your future earnings. That's the borrowing feature of Hedron. Okay, that's how it works. Now, I'm not trying to fight Hedron because I think the NFT side of it and all those sorts of things are just game changers. I think they're really good. The way you can move stakes around and send them off to other people, I think that is next level. That's some really cool features on top of Hex. But if we're talking specifically about the borrowing side, that's my take on it.
Why did you say that they wouldn't like your answer?
Mainly just because it when I'm comparing it to like a credit card, and I think credit cards in the whole have a pretty bad rap in terms of how people can get into bad situations borrowing against future earnings they don't have. Now, that analogy only goes so far with Hedron because I know it's not the same as a credit card, and I understand the way the interest works in Hedron. That's for the Hedron guys to come in and talk to that point.
Okay.
But if we're just looking at straight analogies, that's the way I see it.
Okay. Next question. When the APR...
I'd like
go
to-
ahead.
Can I answer a question that I see somebody's asked in the chat? So, Immutable is asked, he's looking to understand vault security. How does he know that it won't be hacked? And how does he know that it's secure? It's your keys, it's your coins, it's your wallet address. For your vault, it's literally your vault. So if you give up your seed phrase to somebody, that person who has your seed phrase can go in and they can manipulate your collateral level or do whatever they want, withdraw your excess collateral, and steal your coins. Just like as if it's literally your wallet address. All you've done is interact with a smart contract. That's all you've done, right? Just very, very much like Hex. So if you're familiar with Hex, I imagine that you are. So when you enter into a Hex stake, those stakes are still secured under your wallet address with a smart contract. So it's still your keys, your coins.
Okay, cool.
I just want to add. Can I just add a little bit more to that? Like this code. So the protocol itself is battle tested on Ethereum. The amount of audits that happened prior to it being launched were quite detailed. There's a lot of agent-based modeling that's gone into modeling how the system works, and those things like the total collateralization ratios and all those little intricacies and settings in the system have been modeled to the nth degree. And that is all publicly available. People can go look at those audits. They can look at all the modeling, and they can go see how it's performed in real life on the chain. Like it's solid.
Have you guys talked to members of their team?
Yep. Yeah, we've got an open dialogue with them.
Do you think that having much more volume on this protocol, i.e. Pulse Chain might have quite a bit more, do you think that's going to have any bearing on whether or not the contract holds up well? Or is that just something that doesn't matter at all?
I don't think it matters.
Okay. All right. Next question here.
Actually, I'll go one step further and say I think it improves the health of the system.
How so?
And I'll explain why. So, and I'll use Hex as an analogy. So we talk about the recovery mode, and recovery mode is not a desirable state to be in. So the system naturally pushes people away by its design and the levers it makes use of to steer people away from going into recovery mode. Now, there'll be some people that have vaults at a lower ratio and other people that will have vaults at a really high ratio. And I compare that to Hex staking. So we've got an average stake length of about 6 years. Now, to get that average stake length of 6 years, you've got a lot of stakes out at the 15 years. You've got a lot of stakes down at the short term, 30 days, 1 year. But it all balances out to bring the system up to about 6 years. So as you've got people putting in their vaults and different collateral levels, you will see a similar effect. So the more people you have, the more, I guess, distribution you have across all those ranges. So it brings more stability to the overall system.
Okay.
And I think this community actually has a leg up with knowledge about how these systems would work. Even if they don't believe they do, a lot of the hex community, I know that community is not just who is in our community, but a large portion is, and those people are all aware of how these systems interact. Right? You have staking, you have reason to make sure you're protecting what you have in the long run. So you'll see higher collateral ratios. I think that's why you see a lot of these strategies are high, because the people want to make sure that they're not going to be.
Do you
in
guys
risk.
feel any responsibility for education towards people for not screwing themselves, or no?
Yeah, definitely. That's
I
why
think-
we're taking
yeah.
the time to do it.
Next question here. How do you get USDL to fiat? Pretty simple, I guess.
Yeah.
Same as you would with Hex or Pulse X or the incentive token or any other token on the chain. You're going to have to swap it or send it somewhere and realize value at an exchange level, most likely.
And let's go one step further, because we're dealing with very young systems at this point in time, Hex included. There's not a great deal of on-ramps for Hex. So the same way, like Abra mentioned, the same way you get out of Hex is the same way you initially do that. But that's the long-term vision. Is we've got this stable coin on multiple on-ramps so that there is an easy path onto Pulse chain using that. That's where we want to head. But does it happen overnight? Well, no. We've got to build, and Pulse has got to prove itself before exchanges will list its assets and things like that. So that's going to take time.
How does your protocol make money?
Sorry. Yep. So 100% of the fees and the stuff generated in this protocol.
The protocol doesn't make money.
No, it's just contracts that you interact with, and the fees go to the stakers of the protocol, right?
Okay.
The community. They go right back to the community. Somebody asked also. They said, "Oh, but when you swap, it's a taxable event." That's true. But if you take $1 worth of USDL or $10, whatever it is, $10 worth of USDL, and you swap it for $10 worth of Pulse, and you go through a bridge and you swap that for $10 worth of ETH, and you send it back and you swap that for $10 worth of fiat, you don't have any gains there. In fact, you may have had a couple fees along the way.
Okay. So I guess this is just another one from the chat here. Liquid loans are great, but what happens if 90% of the money sacrificed comes from two really big pools? What will that do to the distribution and volume multiplier?
Well, the distribution probably wouldn't change because you have all the participants within the pool.
Right.
But the volume multiplier would be a lot less for those two pools because your dollars are spread across the entire multiplier of 1.5, right? So, or 2.5. So you would end up with, say that the pools are almost exactly the same size, right? They just both happen to be really close. One of them would get a spread from 1 to 1.75. And whatever the median is of that. And then you'd have the other that goes from 1.75 to 2.5 or whatever the median is of that. That would be the volume multiplier.
Got it. So let's say you want to pay off a loan to release your PLS that was locked. Do you have to pay in USDL? If so, how do you get more USDL if you've already used it to buy more PLS? Do I have to sell other PLS to get USDL?
Yeah, so that's there's probably a lot more to that question than meets the eye because it depends what you've done with the USDL in the meantime. Have you just put it in the stability pool? If you've put it in the stability pool, you pull it out, pay down the debt. So that's pretty easy. If you don't have it and you need to acquire more, then obviously you buy it on market, and then you can pay down. How you choose to do that, what asset you choose to sell, totally up to you. When you initially done it, did you extract value in USDL, go buy some hex and put it in a stake? When that stake completes, take the interest, pay off the USDL loan if you wish. Now, the reality might be, so if this launches on a chain that does 10,000x, so no expectations, the reality might be that you never have to pay back that loan at all. So that the value in your vault may go up so much that as a representation of how much you've pulled out, it's insignificant. You may never, ever want to pay it back.
I would use the loan token. That's what I'd be using. I'd be using the fees that I gather from the loan token to be paying off my loan if that was that was my goal.
Yep. There's just so many ways you can carve this up. There's so many different strategies, as you've probably seen kicking around. There's at least half a dozen different strategies that our admin teams cooked up, and they all look at different facets, whether it's collecting the yield from the loan token or accumulating more pulse. So many different ways you can play the game.
Okay.
Yeah, remember, there's no interest. There's no interest payment. You're not going to have a monthly payment that comes due, and if you don't pay it, you're going to lose all your crypto or something, right? You have a one-time borrowing fee at the beginning. And as long as you have collateral in there backing what you've minted, you don't have to pay it back. So like Jexxa said, if you started at a 500% collateral ratio and the value of Pulse after that does 100x, you're now at 50,000% collateral ratio. Like your loan is so small compared to the value of your Pulse that you're probably just going to mint more stablecoin and make your loan bigger.
Is there a way to destroy the USDL peg? Somebody asks if people just keep taking out more and more loans and buying more Pulse and keep looping it, could that bring down the USDL peg eventually?
What ends up
the
happening?
The peg is to 110% of the value of Pulse. So if the system, and at 150%, it's trying to recuperate. So the only way that could possibly happen is if the Pulse, everybody in there had a lowest collateralization ratio, and they all came upon a time where everybody lost all the same value. At that point, the chain probably isn't running any longer, and we don't have bigger things to worry about than this protocol, I'd imagine.
Right. Let's talk about the peg though for a second. I imagine the person's inquiring about the value of the USDL being worth $1 or $1 worth of something. So like all liquidity pools work the same way. Yeah, there's two tokens, right? And let's say somebody comes across around and they dump some USDL and they want Pulse or something, right? They just offset the ratio. The value of USDL in that liquidity pool, the value just went down because the ratio was changed. You had something that maybe was a $1's worth, and maybe now it's like 99 cents or 98 cents. You see this all the time. Stable coins fluctuate in price just a little bit all the time. That's normal, okay? But what happens in protocols such as this is arbitrageurs come in right behind those guys who just sold that USDL, and they buy it back up. They literally buy it back up to $1 because that arbitrager is guaranteed $1's worth of Pulse for that 99 cent USDL you just bought.
Or he's given $1 worth of value to pay off his loan.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. So if you want to pay back your loan, you could be watching out for cheap USDL at any point. If it happens to get below 99 cents or somewhere in that range, and you think it's a good value to buy and pay back some of your loan, then do it. You're saving some money.
Okay. So there's feedback loops in the system that bring the peg back into line and keep it there. And one of the big ones is like Jesse said, if the price of USDL somehow on market on a DEX got pushed down to 90 cents, people would go buy that, and then they could actually redeem it for $1 worth of Pulse on the system. So they'd make 10% arbitrage by grabbing it redeeming it for the pulse on the system. And that has nothing to do whether you've got a loan or a vault or anything. Anyone always can take one USDL and redeem it for $1 worth of pulse. So even if it's worth 90 cents, you'll get $1 worth of pulse.
Yeah.
That's what we mean by the system remaining solvent. You can always redeem that one USDL for $1 worth of pulse.
All right. What's going to happen when Pulse is $5 and there's billions of dollars that people want to get out? And it's going to be trapped in Pulse chain. How will we be able to get the billions out? I think, yeah, that's a pretty simple one, I think.
You use liquid loans and extract value.
Okay. I'm maybe he's saying that if they've locked it in, this might just be a misunderstanding of the protocol, but if you got it out at the beginning, a lot like 1,000 people did, or 10,000 people, and then at 10,000 X's, is there going to be any issue with pulling your pulse back out?
No, less is locked. So as the value of your collateral goes up, less tokens are pretty much essentially locked in the contract that's holding that as collateral. So your number of tokens locked becomes lower and lower and lower and lower over time as value goes up. And you can do as you wish with any of that, as long as you're not extracting more than 110% of what's been minted.
What are two primary disadvantages of this protocol?
Risk is one. That's why we need to educate ourselves about collateral. That's one of the inherent risks. Anybody else have one?
I mean, outside
the stability pool.
Yeah.
So stability pool, you have to cover liquidations, right? So that is another risk. Not that it's inherent. It is what it is, but that is another risk. So it has risk of impermanent loss if you're not a pulse holder over time. If you are, then you're acquiring a collateral that you wish to hold anyhow, and the price when it corrects after it dips past where you covered a liquidation, it'll come back and then it'll be higher. So if you're someone that's not a holder, then you may have some risk there for a small amount of time.
Let's clarify that, because I want people to understand how that works. If you take your USDL, you put it in the stability pool. The stability pool performs an important act where it keeps the system in check. Now, if there's a liquidation, some USDL is taken from the stability pool to pay down the debt in the vault that is getting liquidated. But all things being equal, the amount of pulse that was sitting in that vault should be roughly 10% or 9%, 9.5% higher in value than the USDL that was used to pay it back. So where does that 9.5% go? That goes back to the people that are in the stability pool. So you give up some of your USDL, but you get approximately 9 to 10% worth more in pulse back.
Okay. Why do you think that there are many hexagons against liquid loans?
I would
they
say
don't know about it yet.
Lack of education.
Yeah.
Any other
That's
reasons?
okay. I don't think so. It's either that or just personal reasons.
I think it's education, right? Because hexagons are already following the narrative on the ETH chain, at least, that we want to be decorrelated, right? You want to pair hex to USDC, right? So that it can do its best to not follow the rest of the markets. And then you also, hear the narratives and you try and take it to heart that counterparty risk is bad, that you don't want to get involved with middleman D, right? So you put all these narratives together, and what you would want is a stable coin on a protocol that allows you to also extract value in that stablecoin completely trustlessly, without any of those issues, without any counterparty. And so until people look into the protocol and they understand that it literally fits all the same narratives that they already believe, it's simply a lack of education.
Okay.
I think that just following on from that, not only is it not centralized, the participants of the system actually own the system. So if you're holding the loan token, you are collecting all that value from that service. So every time a fee is generated on the system, that goes back to the owners of the system. It's the holy grail, like in terms of having this system that is going to give you that decentralized stable coin. And things are going to get a lot worse for holders of USDL and of USDC and Tether, because there's so much more regulation coming down the pipeline, that decentralized stablecoins are going to play a very, very important role. And some people realize that. Some people, it's going to take a little bit more to realize that. But if that stablecoin is owned by the community that are using it and supporting it, that's next level. It's a beautiful protocol.
I don't think they've learned that loan token is like a T-share.
Yeah. Yep.
Go ahead. Loan token is
Except
like a T-share.
it doesn't give you a definite return. Well, I guess T-share doesn't either. It gives you a portion, which is the same thing, but it doesn't have a definite fee that comes in continuously. It's only upon actions of the participants, which is fine. But other than that, you're receiving all the fees that are generated. So if you're staking loan tokens, you're getting fees. And the best part is you're getting it in a different asset that you don't have to sell on top of yourself.
Okay.
I like to add to that. You don't it doesn't expire. When you have those loan tokens staked, you can literally keep them staked for generations, pass them to your family or whoever, as long as the chain exists, right? Like there's no set max out at 15 years or anything like that. Now, these tokens, the value of these things should follow the price of Pulse. And we've done some modeling that shows that it actually gets really, really attractive. Now, let me explain. As the value of Pulse goes up, we talked about the vaults and what happens when people are taking loans. As the value of Pulse goes up, people's loans get bigger, which means the fees get bigger, which means those fees that are feeding those stakers, they're collecting more and more and more fees. But that simultaneously raises the value of that loan token because it makes it more desirable to hold on to those loan tokens. Okay, so because of this, it should follow the value of Pulse, at least the same, in the same directions. It could do better, could do significantly better than Pulse, and that's not unusual. People can hate me for saying that, but if you look on Ethereum chain, typically good protocol ERC20s will do better than the native coin. When you stack the charts, you see ETH go up by 4%. You see a good protocol that's following it go up by 10% in that same time period. You see ETH go down by 10%. You see that same protocol go down by 12 or 15%. They're much more volatile, but the gains are usually typically much bigger in the ERC20s for a good protocol. You'll see the same behaviors that have always exhibited themselves on other chains here. Now, those tokens, let's just pretend it does 100x and you get tempted to sell it. Don't forget that you're getting 100x the fees that somebody who brings the same economic energy as you would have to bring to get the same amount of those fees, right? So if you bought the token on the open market on day one for 10 cents and it happened 100x, somebody else who put 10 cents in would be getting 100 times less of the fees than you for the same amount of economic energy. So you have to think, do I want to dump this thing if it does go up in value? Or do I just want to keep holding on to it as it gets more expensive? Because these things get harder and harder to obtain. They literally may become very hard to obtain because the reward release pool releases less and less and less of them over time. As more and more users of the protocol come in and use the stability pool, there is some dilution effect there where it becomes hard to get your hands on these things. Early participants in this sort of thing win every single time.
Okay. Let's ask the next question here. Why does the sacrifice period seemingly keep getting pushed back?
Yeah, like most things, you don't go until you're comfortable that everything's in place and ready to go. It makes no sense. And I talked about this on the Hex Late Show the other night. Humans have a way of giving themselves these timelines that they have to meet and put pressures on themselves to meet these timelines. And I don't understand why. This is not a sprint, guys. This is a marathon. Pulse chain as an exercise is not a 1 month event or a 3 month event. It is probably a decades type event. So what seems like a couple of weeks is an issue now, in the grand scheme of things, will turn out to be nothing. It'll be a blip in the radar. We waited 2 years for Hex to go through many iterations to get released. But when it was released, it is what it is today, and that will serve it well in the future. We're watching other people that are building on the chain now. They're doing the same thing. They're making sure they're ticking all the boxes and making sure things are the way they need to be before they get released. Reality is, Pulse chain, we haven't even seen it yet. So I don't know why there's all this pressure when we haven't even got the substrate that the protocol is going to run on ready yet. So yeah, I think people just need to be patient and understand that there is reasons for this, and everyone's working to bring the best possible product they can to market.
Okay. Other than potentially the team, which is really nobody's business, has a sacrifice been opened up for any other non-team individuals?
No, it's a fair launch.
Okay. Does it bother you guys that you're one of the only major projects that have announced they're going to be launching on Pulse Chain?
I think obviously we're probably leading the charge, and we're taking the heat for leading that charge. That's okay. We're happy with that. We understand that we're breaking new ground. That's fine. That also means we're going to get first mover advantage. So you look across on the ETH chain and you have a look at all the different lending protocols, and Liquidity's sitting over there, but it's amongst a sea of other protocols over there. What if we're the first one to the Pulse chain? What if we become the dominant stablecoin on the Pulse chain? There's the pain of going through this first could turn out to be the best thing we ever do.
Yeah. Plus, I think it'll help the community as well. So, like Jexxa said, we're kind of like trailblazing, getting the first ones out there. But we also are learning a lot that we could give back too. So if people in the community need to reach out, at least they know who has gone through this stuff. So if they want to reach out, they're able to reach out, right? They have somebody to rely on to get some information from in some manner. And then others that come along, it kind of just reinstills that, it is fine to do things and help the community. It doesn't matter what kind of crap that you get, to be honest with you. It doesn't bother me a bit.
Based on
we know what the end goal is, right? So we know what that is.
Okay. Based on your open dialogue with Liquidity, right? Do you guys suspect that they might come to Pulse Chain and compete with you guys, or you might hop over to Ethereum and compete with them?
Did you want to deal with that one, Abra? I'm happy to, but if you
the reason that this came about was because they didn't want to engage with Pulse Chain. So they were fine, that somebody else took the helm, pretty much. If they come over later, then they come over later. But I don't believe they'd have a reason to be honest with you.
So understand they're developers. They're real geeky, and they've developed a kick-ass protocol, but they're not marketers. They don't know how to promote their own damn thing on their own chain. And what we've seen is this protocol has been spun up on probably 6 or 7 other chains. Okay, you name a chain, it's probably got a version of this thing running on it. And they're okay with that. They've invented this thing, and if they didn't want people to use it, they wouldn't have open sourced it. So they could have licensed it like Uniswap v3, but they didn't. They put it out in the open. They want to see it get used and adopted. I think their interest is in bringing something that all communities need and can be used, and get away from the centralized stablecoins. So if they achieve that, I think they would be chuffed. We're always in dialogue with them, and they'll get full credit on the protocol as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it reinforces that they had a good product, right? It's a
Mm.
positive thing that people want to use it, and that actually develop, and then the developers that are also looking at this to fork it are saying, you know what, this is good enough. Obviously, those developers can look at it and understand that it works the way it's intended to. And it's a beautiful code. So if you have all these different groups that are forking this and putting them on all different chains, it just shows that it actually is a product that people should be using if they're continuously using it over and over again.
Okay. Jesse, I'd like you to address this, because if you have questions in the comments and you posted 3 or 4 times, I want to make sure you understand. So this is the 3rd or 4th time he's posted. Where does the money come from, and how can you possibly offer it billions? And this is with respect regards to the question before, like, if Pulse Chain does a 10,000x, how are people going to be able to get their money out? I don't think he quite understands how liquid loans works. I guess he thinks that there's not going to. Go ahead.
When you say off-ramp billions, I imagine he's saying billions of dollars worth of USDL.
It seems like he's concerned. He's saying I think what he doesn't understand maybe is that it's going to be based on the price appreciation of Pulse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So every USDL that's ever minted has collateral Pulse backing it, right? So there's always more dollar value worth of Pulse in the vaults than there is dollar value worth of USDL in existence. So what you'll see is if Pulse runs up in value 10,000x, and there's just hundreds of billions of dollars worth of value on the Pulse chain and Pulse coin, you'll see less value than that in USDL. So like the money came in to pump the price, you can get out, right? It took economic energy to pump Pulse up to that point. So that money has literally already been put into the system to pump it, right? So you can, it's very easy to take your USDL. Every one of them is fully backed and redeemable. You can go swap it as well over on the DEXs, and you'll already have that liquidity to be able to get out.
All right, thank you.
You've essentially transferred the value of Pulse into the USDL token. So
perfect.
That's all. It's a simple transfer of value.
Okay. You're forking.
Can we ask? There's another one of these difficult questions. I tried to answer it a minute ago. Jexxa does a good way of explaining this one as well.
You're going to throw me under the bus, are you?
No, because you've gone through the model. You showed me the chart the other day. So how do we say that this we're forking Liquidity, which this guy, he says it's down 95% after the first pump. I will add that in day one of Liquidity, it did a 900% or 9x on day one. So you got to account for some of that. But how can you say it's a good protocol and it has the ability to outperform the main layer coin when it didn't on ETH?
And I think, so I think what people are looking at is they're going to the chart and they're having a look, and there are so many layers of dynamics behind how the price of their Liquidity token or LQTY token, how it derives value, that it's not a simple answer, but we'll try and unpack it a little bit. So the first thing I'll say is there was a brand new protocol launched, and it's only on the ETH chain. We're talking sort of 8 to 10 months this thing's been running, so it's still very immature. It also launched at a particular time when the market reversed. So if performance is somewhat linked to the performance of the main asset, and that main asset is going down, people aren't looking to shovel it into loan protocols and things like that. You're watching the price of the main asset go down. So I think the launch time was not ideal for them. So they've had to bear the brunt of potentially a long-term bear market. We've been in a downtrend for a while. So that's one point. And I think a lot of people didn't understand how to use the token, how to stake it, and things like that. And if we are going to launch this on a chain where we think the price could potentially 10,000x, that means that there is so much more upside for an asset where the protocol is directly linked to that native coin's performance. So that's one big difference between all of these other versions, where it's launched on different chains. Now, Jesse, he went through the example that if the price of Pulse pumps up, then that means there's more value that can be extracted from the system in terms of USDL. The USDL that's extracted, you pay a fee to do that to the system. That fee goes to the loan token holders. So if you're in an environment where the main chain is successful, and we're starting at pretty much zero on the main chain, so it can literally only go up from there. Now, it will have its dips and things like that as well. But if in general we agree that chart is going to go up and to the right, that bodes well for this protocol. So the value all that value is captured in the loan token. And if you come in early, like Jesse said, you get the loan token at launch price. And all this value over time keeps getting built into the yield of that token. You might see yields of 2,000%, 3,000%. Now, everyone knows yields like that are not sustainable. And the reason they're not sustainable is it's a no-brainer. If someone looks across at a protocol and sees a yield of 3,000%, what are they going to do? They're going to go buy the damn asset that's producing that yield. What does that do? Drives the price of the asset up. So, yeah, they're all linked. There's a lot of dynamics, and the way that Liquidity launched, they took a lot of VC money. So they're probably beholden to a few people in the background there. There's so many different dynamics, and we've had the benefit of looking across the way all of these protocols have been launched on the various chains. We've pulled apart the tokenomics of each of those, and Liquidity almost had it right. They nearly almost had it right. We've made a few adjustments, but you could go across and look at Liquidity, and you could imagine that would be be very similar in terms of some of the distributions. But we don't have VCs in the system, do we? We have other participants. We have other community members instead. So it's more community owned.
Okay, thank you. Just to let the chat know, we're going to cut this off pretty soon here. So if you have any more questions, please put them in. One of the questions just popped through. Is there any news on the liquid loan sacrifice phase and how the rate will work, since it will be for a stable coin?
Well, it's not for anything, right? It's for sacrifices for no expectations.
Points.
But there is a bonus structure, and it's 10,000 points per sacrifice dollar in the first 10 days. After that, the rate's going to go down by 5% every day thereafter. Everyone's very familiar with that from other sacrifices that have recently occurred. There's a bigger pays better bonus. People are familiar with that. 1x out to 2.5x. You're going to fall in a range somewhere in there. But there's a twist. There's also a longer pays better. You could choose to lock up your sacrifice points for a period of time, all the way out to 2 years. And you get a 6% bonus for every month that you decide to lock. The last month will get you a little bump up to 12, but that equates to a 2.5x for a 2-year lock. So not only are you going to get your multiplier bonus for your volume, for how big you can move, but then you're also going to get a multiplier bonus for how long you decided to lock. And people always ask, like, why would I want to lock? Remember back an hour ago or 45 minutes ago, I was explaining how hard it would be to get these coins as more participants come in, as the value of them might go up. Don't assume that coming out on day one that you'd be able to have 2.5x your coin count. You could very easily get a yield and get 2.5x your perceived dollar value. And lots of protocols you could do that. This is crypto. You can 2.5x in an hour in crypto. But that doesn't mean that you'd ever be able to 2.5x your coin count. So just keep that in mind. That's why you would want to lock.
All right. Why was 10,000 points per dollar chosen for SAC? Was it just to copy pulse SACs, or was it specifically chosen for a tokenomics reason?
Look, in most instances, it just comes down to percentages. It doesn't matter whether you choose 10 or 10,000, it's percentages. But what I think is important is if we look across at assets that have a larger supply, and this is more recent. So assets that have a larger supply amount look cheaper. People think they can get in earlier. So there's that how does Richard
unit bias? Unit
bias. Yeah. So there's that unit bias thing at play. Now, it also aligns with Pulse and Pulse X. So everyone's used to that methodology. Why do something different if everyone's now used to that? And it'll also put the total coin amount more in line with Pulse and Pulse X as well. So it makes sense all around.
Okay. All right. I'm pretty much going to wrap it up there. I did want to let chat know this. This is very important to me. I just want to thank you guys for putting yourself out there. Okay. Because a lot of people don't like to face the heat. You went into the town hall. And a lot of times what happens is there's a lot of back chatter, but then when you put yourself out there, nobody shows up. That's normal human behavior, unfortunately. So I do appreciate you guys coming out there. I will say that I did ask Jesse prior to this if there were any questions that you guys really wanted to touch on. And three of the about 50 questions that we asked tonight were from Jesse, just to let you guys know that, but that's it. Jesse and I kind of talked about that. And I also wanted to let you guys know that how much money were you paying me for this interview, Jexxa?
Zero.
Okay. I will say he paid me zero, and I want to be very clear with everybody. I once was an admin in the Liquid Loans chat. I am no longer. And the reason that I gave them was because I want to be as unbiased as possible. And this is when they were first starting out. But guys, I wanted to let you guys know that I think it's awesome that you put yourself out there. But here's the problem. The problem is I can't let you off my stream unless somebody tells a really bad dad joke. Go ahead.
A dad joke.
If you need Google, you might as well Google it, because we're not getting off the stream till that happens.
Well, Jesse has the most kids. He should know a good one.
He's throwing you under the bus, man. I'm going to have to Google it.
Sorry, guys. Just the rules.
All right, let's go. What do we got? Oh, come on. These are the worst. These are the worst jokes.
Is this awkward for you, Jexxa?
Yeah.
You have a red face right
now? Why was the color green notoriously single?
Please repeat that, pronunciate it better for the stream, please.
Why was the color green notoriously single?
Why was the color green notoriously single? I don't know. Please let us know.
It was always so jaded.
Guys, with that, we're out. Thank you guys very much. Be good.
Take it easy. Thank you.
We're out.
Thanks for having us on.